Mr. Kepel, I'm a Vietnam veteran and followed the French in Indochina. The Americans have followed the Turks and the British in Iraq. You want to respond to whether or not this survey of global attitudes about American involvement in Iraq lessens our chances of doing better in the war on terrorism? Does it create more Osama bin Ladens, as Mubarak once said?
Thank you. Well, do you want me to answer in my capacity as a Frenchman or as a scholar?
Whichever you're most comfortable with, mon ami.
Well, coming from seeing myself as a stinking cheese-eating weasel, and that may explain why the image of the present American administration in my country is not, to use a euphemism, extremely positive. And I once even thought that people should sue some of the American media for portraying French people with the weasels' heads, and if had it been some other groups, maybe discrimination. Oh no, that's another story. So I would say that the view of U.S. policy outside the U.S. nowadays, and I can, to some extent, speak for Europe because this is where I live, but of the Muslim world because this is what I study, is that the U.S. is mainly interested in its vested interests more than it is interested in the common good. And this may be right or wrong. I mean, you're free to approve or disapprove of it. But I think that this is a very deeply rooted feeling worldwide. And that means what? That means that groups of people, and in the middle class mostly, who would otherwise be willing to follow the U.S. lead, who would largely, as is the case in Western Europe, share a fair amount of values that we have in common, now feel that the U.S. leadership is not really trustworthy because it leads to U.S. interests more than it leads to a shared sort of global leadership, if you wish. And if such beliefs are held in a number of European countries where we share the same culture, we share a number of things to a large extent, then definitely this is felt much more in the rest of the world. So I would say that there's a lot to be done. Probably in patching up those differences in terms of not only declaration but also action. That, for instance, clearly, when we talk about Iraq, Iraq was a military victory, an American military victory, though some very well-placed people in the administration, which I saw today, told me that it was not a victory. The war was not really over, and that many Iraqis still believe that the war is not over, which is a mistake, militarily speaking. But nevertheless, if we assume that this is a victory militarily, because the Saddam Hussein army is done and so on and so forth, how come it did not translate into a political success? How come the Iraqi middle classes have not emerged just like, say, the Polish middle classes or the Russian or the Czech middle classes after the lid of the Soviet system had been taken away? Now, the lid of the lead lid, if I may say so, of the Saddam Hussein fascist, communist, or what have you, Ba'athist regime has been taken away. But nevertheless, you don't find an organized civil society in the Iraqi cauldron underneath. I wonder to what extent the U.S. is perceived in the region for that purpose as the honest broker. I mean, as the honest midwife which will give birth to Iraqi, the democratic Iraq, which will in its turn lead the way. And if most people in the region do not say that the reason why the armed operation was called Operation Iraqi Freedom and not Operation Iraqi Liberty was that the acronym for Operation Iraqi Liberty would have been OIL, and that OIF was more misleading. So, you know, definitely there is a problem, I would say, of communication. There is also a problem of, definitely the US and the British were the ones who were instrumental in bringing Saddam down. But I do not think that they can be the only ones to bring the Iraqi society back on its feet. And without the participation of the international community, there will always be some feeling of suspicion, which will hamper the very efforts that the U.S. are doing in Iraq. And I think this is, you know, some people say that nowadays the Europeans who are not pro-war rejoice. We don't. I think that that a disaster in Iraq is a disaster for all of us and for the whole world. So I would rather say that we have to join forces, and we weasels are ready to forgive you for all those insults.